Good morning. Once again, I am back with Gray's elegy, and here we are going now to enter the portion of the poem in which how the poet feels for himself that someone even after his death will inquire about him, just as he is right now inquiring about these obscure poor village folk who have died an undeclared and unknown death. I read here first of all from the poem. For thee, who mindful of the unhonored dead, dost in these lines their artless tale relate. If chance, by lonely contemplation led, some kindred spirit shall inquire thy fate. Thy refers to the poet himself. The poet imagines here that some kindred spirit or kindred soul will come and inquire about his fate, just as he is right now doing in case of these poor villagers. After meditating about the obscure fate of the humble villagers and their simple annals, the poet begins to imagine about himself. Like the poor rustics, he also desires to be remembered after death. He says that perhaps some other poet like Gray, who is meditating about the life of the poor villagers, may also be led by lonely contemplation to inquire about the dead poet, that is, Gray himself. The poet is haunted by the idea of an early death, although he died almost about 21 years after finishing this poem. Next stanza. Haply some hoary-headed swain may say, often have we seen him at the peep of dawn, brushing with hasty steps the dews away, to meet the sun upon the upland lawn. That is, perhaps some old man may inform the kindred spirit who inquires about Gray that they had often seen Gray moving swiftly across the lawn, brushing aside the dewdrops to reach the upland before the sunrise early in the morning. The poet says that perhaps some grey-headed peasant will inform about his whereabouts to the person who will inquire about the poet who, after his death will be cherishing his desire to be remembered. They would inform that they have often seen him, that is the poet Gray, moving fast with hasty steps and wiping off the dewdrops so that he may enjoy the sunrise at the upland lawns. Next stanza. There at the foot of yonder nodding beech that reads its old fantastic roots so high, his listless length at noontide would be stretched and pour upon the brook that babbles by. The kindred spirit would come to know that Gray used to lie down beside the river at noon and watch its flow. That was his routine. After informing about his morning routine, the villagers might inform the kindred spirit that they had often seen Gray lying at the strangely shaped roots of that beech, moving sideways in the wind. There Gray would lie down beside the river at noon and would look intently at the river that flowed by with a murmuring sound, perhaps lost in meditation, deep, profound meditation. Next stanza. Hard by yon wood, now smiling as in scorn, muttering his wayward fancies he would rove, now drooping, woeful vain, like one forlorn or crazed with care or crossed in hopeless love. Gray again here continues about him, talking about himself through this elegy. And he says that the people would inform that he was often seen near the wood, wandering with a scornful smile, uttering his whimsical thoughts like a disappointed person. The kindred spirit would also be informed that Gray was often seen lost in thoughts, wandering about all alone near that wood. He was smiling scornfully, perhaps at the vanity of the world, vanity of the ways of the world. He would often utter his whimsical thoughts in a low voice as he wandered about. Sometimes he would hang down his head like a melancholic man who has been deserted by all and is now all alone. He would look distracted or driven by all and is now all alone. He would look distracted and driven to craziness or madness by anxieties or disappointments in this world. Next, one morn I missed him on the customed hill, along the heath and near his favourite tree. Another came, nor yet beside the rill, nor up the lawn, nor at the wood was he. The farmers would say that one day they did not see Gray, they did not find Gray on his usual walk or at his usual favorite places. The farmers will inform that the kindred spirit one day they did not see on the hill which was his usual resort, nor upon the heath, nor near his favorite tree. Another day passed or succeeded, but the poet was not to be found either beside the stream, or upon the land, or at the wood where he usually visited or rested. The next, with dirges due in said array, slow through the church way path we saw him borne. Approach and read, for thou canst read the lay graved on the stone beneath yon aged thorn. And what happened next day? The next day, poor villagers saw his coffin being carried to the graveyard. The farmers would inform the kindred spirit that the next day they saw the dead body of the poet being carried through the path leading to the graveyard. Befitting mourning songs or dirges were sung in the funeral procession. They would further ask the kindred spirit to go near the tombstone of Gray and read, because he can't read, the short narrative poem engraved on the tombstone, which is under that hawthorn tree. After this stanza, the following three stanzas are written by the poet as the epitaph, and he desired that these lines should be engraved upon his gravestone. So now let us move to discuss the epitaph composed by Gray towards the end of the elegy. The first stanza of the epitaph goes thus: Here rests his head upon the lap of earth, a youth to fortune and to fame unknown. Fair signs frowned not on his humble birth, and melancholy marked him for her own. Here, a buried youth who was neither with wealth nor with fame, he was born in a humble family, but he could acquire learning. This is what the poet wishes to be written on his tombstone. In this grave lies a young man who is the poet himself. He lies buried as if he were enjoying rest in the lap of Mother Earth. He was a youth who was neither favored with wealth nor with fame. Although he was born in an humble family, he was learned. Melancholy was the marked characteristic of him. He led a life full of sorrows and miseries. The next stanza. Large was his bounty and his soul sincere. Heaven did a recompense as largely send. He gave to misery all he had, a tear. He gained from heaven, it was all he wished, a friend. He was a very generous and sincere and grave to misery. What he had? A tear, that is sympathy. He had and sympathy, he had empathy for the poor and the downtrodden, and which he got from heaven, and what he wished was a friend. The poet thought that he was born in an humble family and was generous and sincere. He gave the miserable and the downtrodden people all he had, a tear. Tear symbolically stands for sympathy or empathy. He was always in sympathy, he was always in empathy for the miseries of the downtrodden sections of society. In other words, we can say that the poet pitied and sympathized with the lot of the poor, miserable people. God also rewarded him for his generosity, and he got from God all that he wished, a friend. And now the last final stanza of the elegy. No further seek his merits to disclose, or draw his frailties from their dread abode. There they alike in trembling hope repose, the bosom of his Father and his God. The poet says finally that one should not try to disclose the merits and demerits of the person who is buried in this grave, that is the poet himself, and let the person enjoy his eternal rest. One should not try to disclose his virtues and vices anymore, for he is now dead, and the virtues and vices are in a state of suspense. They are trembling in fear of condemnation and hope of pardon, and are resting in the bosom of God, his heavenly Father. So let him rest with God. Let him rest in peace. Thank you.